Okay, I'm Richard Friberg, and this is a figure from my microbook, Derivation of a Production Possibility Frontier in the Specific Factor Model. And I could say at the outset that this is probably the most complex figure that we have in the course, but I think it's really useful for understanding why the production possibility frontier looks the way it does, and why there are gains from trade in this class of models. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the case where there's two goods. Okay, so there's food and there's stuff. Okay, so food, apples, wheat, rice, what have you, stuff, solar panels, bicycles, cars. These should be things that are perfectly competitive. So you should be looking at perfectly competitive markets. So, you know, simple manufactured products, I guess we should be saying. So we're the two products. There's going to be two countries. We call them Capitalia and Agraria, depending on what factors of production they have in different proportions. Here we'll be looking at the country that we call Capitalia. There's going to be three factors of production, three like this. There's going to be land that's used for producing food. Okay. There's going to be capital that's used for production of stuff only. And there's going to be labor that can be used in producing either food or stuff. So labor is going to be mobile across the sectors, whereas land is specific to food production. That's why we call it a specific factor model, and capital is specific to the production of food. Capital is specific to the production of stuff, sorry. Okay, so we're going to be wanting to keep track of where people work. So measure amount of people, labor working in the food production, going downwards here, this axis. The amount of people working in the production of stuff, L as in labor, stuff, going leftward on the horizontal axis. Okay, so let's start with a simple assumption that you know, everyone is working in the production of food. How much food will they be producing? Well, you know, what do we get out if we use more labor? You know, that's something about the production function, right? That we looked at earlier in the course. Okay, so we have something like this. Quantity of food that's produced depends on J, which we used to denote the amount of land, and LF, the amount of labor used in production of food. Okay, so if everyone is working in production of food, they're going to be producing this much food. Okay, tons, kilos, whatever. Okay, what if we're using less people in producing food and more people in producing stuff? We're shifting some people from one sector to another. We're assuming here it's a full employment. Everyone is working. You know, it's just a matter of you working in food or in production of stuff. So a trade-off, you know, depicting where people are working can be done like this with a 45-degree line. Okay, so whoever's not working in production of food, so you know, moving from this position, fewer people in producing food, more people in production of stuff. Okay, so we could, just as we looked at the case where everyone worked in agriculture, we can look at the case where everyone works in production of stuff. So how much stuff are they producing then? Something like this. So we have a production function there for QS stuff. Depends on K, capital, how much is used in the production of stuff, and the amount of labor used in this sector. Okay. So let's similarly look at the case where everyone is producing stuff. How much stuff are they producing then? Well, this much. Okay, so we have 2 points on the production possibility frontier. If everyone produces stuff, producing this much. If everyone is producing food, producing this much. Okay, and then for any point that we think of here, we could move up and say, well, if this many people are producing stuff, we're going to be producing this much, and then we'll go out here, because we're going to be wanting to interact that with, if they're producing this many people working in producing stuff, this many people are working in producing food, how much are they producing? And we're going to have an additional point on the production possibility frontier. So I'm not going to be combining all those because that looks way too messy, but we're going to be thinking about all possible imaginable combinations of that. We're going to get something like this: the production possibility frontier. Okay. How much can we produce in this economy? Well, it depends on where people work. Okay, it has this bowed shape, this curvature, concave, if we want to use a fancy word. What's going on with that? Let's just give some intuition for that. Well, if we're starting from, let's start here. Start from a position, just pick a random point here. We're starting from a position where almost everyone is working in production of food. Okay, so there's tons of people out on the fields. They're crowding these fields, and it's the marginal product of the last worker here is quite low. Okay, so we're already 20 people tilling this little yard, and the contribution of the 21st person is quite low. Okay, on the other hand, if we're looking here, shifting some people from agriculture, so we're shifting people that have a very low marginal productivity, because they're, there's a lot of people chasing little land in some sense in agriculture. We're shifting them to the production of stuff where there's a lot of capital, just sitting idle in some sense, waiting, which is not sitting idle, but it's matched with very few workers. Okay, so the marginal product of an additional worker here is going to be very high. Okay, it's like working in an automated factory in Japan, right? It's one person, lots of capital. That's going to be good for your marginal productivity. So we're replacing people that have a low marginal product. It's the same people, but people are low marginal product in one industry and putting them in another industry where they have a higher marginal product. Okay, so in terms of output, we're shifting those people. Is going to have a relatively small effect on food production, but it's going to have a pretty large effect on production of stuff. Okay, or vice versa. If we're starting from position where everyone is crowded around with machines, but the fields, countryside is largely empty, we would have the opposite kind of effect, where shifting some people out of the production of stuff and into the production of food would get a lot of bang for the buck in some sense. Okay, so essentially the further out into the tails that you get, the harder is it to do further substitution. Okay, so decreasing marginal product of labor in the different sectors is really what's driving the concave shape of this, which will have implications for what happens when we're opening up for trade. We could also see, final point to see is that it's not fully symmetric. The intercept here is further out than here. That's just saying that this is Capitalia. It has relatively much capital, so how much of the various factors of production that you have is going to be affecting this. to make it, it's probably easier to shift capital here, or to shift land, or maybe not. Let's do like this. So say that for some reason even more capital came to this country. What would happen? Well, the production function would be shifting out. We would have a new production function, okay? Which means that if everyone worked in production of stuff, we would have this much. So we would have an even more skewed production function. Okay. Yep, that's it for